All right, so this week was about Cantron's 14, 15, 17, 18, and Bowman's 4 and 5. We'll start with Cantron. So for Cantron's 14, right, it was about establishing creative atmosphere, right? And I really liked the part about setting goals 2 times. Once during the rehearsal process, and then one more time before the end so that the actors and you can go home with understanding what the goal for the day was. And it allows both of you to kind of sleep on what the goal was, maybe come back refreshed and thinking about what that goal was and maybe discussing it later. And I like in chapter 14 for Catron how it isn't necessary for you to say that you're in control if you're really in control. And if you gotta say that you're in control or push or power trip in a way to be like I'm in control, you may not really be in control. And I feel like that's important in not just the director position, but in all positions of power. If it's something that you have to do just on a regular basis, the likelihood that you are in control is very low. And I feel like people that are in control, unless boundaries are pushed, don't really have to go beyond expressing that it's given. It's a given, rather. For Catron's 15, it was about actor/character development. And I like the part in this chapter about objectives versus intentions, and how sometimes they're interchangeable for a lot of people, but the best way to look at it is life goals versus day-to-day goals. And of course we have life goals, right? But our day-to-day goals may not always align with that, but for the most part, they should be aligning to get us to our life goals. That isn't always the case. Sometimes the day-to-day goals tend to be more immediate, right? It's something that's more immediate. It has to happen now, right? I also like how in 15 we talk about James Lang's theory, and it really digs into the moment before and so many different things dealing with the character's spine as well as the story's through line. And I thought that was a brilliant tie-in, especially when we're talking about objectives versus intentions. In chapter 17 and 18, for that matter, we're talking about blocking. But what separates 17 from 18 for me is for 17, you're looking at the principles of stage movement and blocking. And in 18, it's all technical terms. It's looking at charts, or a chart that's like downstage left, upstage right, downstage right, upstage center, downstage center, where the actor's eye focus needs to be, how levels are important, and so many different things. And I think that while both chapters are extremely important, I feel like 18 gives you more of the technical aspect, and it's definitely the chapter of the two where, like, when you're really focusing on what you need to be doing and understanding the technical terms when working with actors to explain it to actors, that's the chapter you want to go back to. Now for Bowman, for chapter 4, it's all about rehearsal from start to finish, and by finish I mean show. I feel like there were a lot of good points in Bowman, especially dealing with the need for a table read to make sure that you don't have actors later on making just random choices that you don't necessarily agree with, that kind of stunts your vision of what the show should be. Having a table read and having a consensus about what this show is about and explaining it to them then is very helpful. And then for chapter 5, it's all about, what the students' levels are and how you can adjust to them. I found it interesting that you shouldn't be micromanaging elementary school students. I don't think you should be micromanaging any of them, but specifically elementary school students, because it can lead to them taking those directions to heart and using those directions for the long term and just making bad acting decisions because you just didn't give them the freedom to kind of do things based on what their level of understanding and life experience is. And then with junior high schoolers, it's scaffolding, but it also being able to like let them work through that awkwardness because they're awkward, tiny humans. And then for senior high school students, just high school students, it's about giving them autonomy and letting them make the decisions with scaffolding, of course, so that they feel that they have more say and that the work is more in their hands than them being controlled by a puppet master. If you're a puppet master in any of these three levels, you're doing something wrong based on what Bowman says in chapters 5. All right.